Hello, 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 hello.
1, 2, 3. I have been here since the moon was just a child,
and the sea flowed like a crystal stream.
The trees grew strong upon my mountains wild,
And the sky was the bluest you've ever seen, bluer than the sky in eagle's dream.
Deloitte jigna una magi, Akdet wali sangko dipni, Mami amadi mi kajidadi jen, Kado abahid wanda si, Taneruji walodo suk Disney.
Nous invitons maintenant Monsieur Richard Kishtabish.
Now we invite Mr. Richard Kistabish to take the floor for the opening comments of this global webinar for the Decade of Indigenous Languages.
Hello, everybody.
I would like to welcome all of you. I'm very honored to be with you. All of you working, of course, for the same objectives. That is to say, the revitalization of our languages. My language is in danger. But I didn't realize that immediately because speaking the language myself, I wasn't really aware of the danger and what was going on around me. And above all, when it came to my children, my family, and my community. I like the opening because when we open ceremonies, it's often very solemn, but here, of course, we had a song today, and everybody can understand or appreciate music. And indeed, part of my work is to make sure that the drums can still ring out across the territories where my own communities grew up. So I invite all of you to participate in a very respectful way, but also in a very generous way with regards to everything that's going to happen in the coming years. We are at the very beginning of our mission to revitalize our languages. I see this decade as a kind of spark, a flash in time, because we are trying, of course, to stop our languages to disappear. And indeed, we're all trying to contribute to saving our languages. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for those touching words of introduction.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. A warm welcome to all of you around the world to this important webinar, ASPnet in Action, Engagement for the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. My name is Julie Saito. I am the International Coordinator of ASPnet. I would like to acknowledge and thank the Canadian Commission for UNESCO for their financial support, great engagement and collaboration in this project. I would also like to thank our colleagues in the UNESCO sector for communication and information, who are in charge of the coordination of the International Decade, as well as from the education sector for their support and collaboration. And it is an honor to welcome all the members of our advisory committee for this project, who represents a variety of indigenous language speakers around the world, and who have advised and guided us in shaping and sharing their knowledge and experience, as well as their enthusiasm and creativity in this activity. Now, some housekeeping aspects. Please click on the interpretation button and select if you like to follow the webinar in English, French, or Spanish. We invite you to use the chat to share greetings in your languages, your country and school name, or for comments. Please use the Q&A tool to ask your questions to the speakers. We will ensure to share their responses with you in a follow-up email from the webinar. UNESCO encourages quality teaching and learning that respects diversity, promotes peace, intercultural understanding to enable both indigenous and non-indigenous persons to live together without prejudice, discrimination, violence, and conflicts. This inclusive approach enables indigenous people to share their knowledge to enrich education systems. This work is an integral part of ASPnet's approach to transformative education, under the premise that education can only be transformative when students feel valued, acknowledged, safe, and are included in the learning community as full and active members. Today, we have come together to raise awareness in our network and beyond of the importance of linguistic diversity and multilingualism for sustainable development and the promotion of transformative education. We will hear inspiring examples of good practices for indigenous teaching and learning, and learn about how schools and each of us can become engaged and take action for the International Decade for Indigenous Languages. This webinar is thus ASPnet's invitation to you all to be inspired to take action. Once again, I would like to thank those involved in this organization of this webinar for all their hard work. Thank you all for being here today and wish you a very fruitful and inspiring webinar. I'm now pleased to invite my colleague in Garda, Kasinskes, sorry, I cannot pronounce very well, in Garda, Kasinskaite Budeberg, who is heading the team for the International Decade of Indigenous Languages at UNESCO, to take the floor for her presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to screen my PowerPoint and as well to address you all together. So very happy to see the members of the Global Task Force together with us. And as well as very much delighted to address you today to really raise awareness about the importance of indigenous languages, linguistic diversity and multilingualism. And I would like to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank our colleagues from education sector and for incredible work done by UNESCO Social School Network and our really dear colleagues from Canadian National Commission for UNESCO and members of the Global Task Force who are present here for the leadership, for the collaboration, support in organizing this timely event. And what I would like to share with you today, why languages are important. We already have heard from our previous speaker, distinguished our chair, who was introducing the first in his opening remarks, Richard, what languages are important from his personal experience but looking from the international decade framework, we would like to emphasize that language, of course, is a core component of human rights and fundamental freedoms. And as we constitute as a very important systematic form for communication, for human communication, which places in all human domains importance, allowing people to communicate with each other, transmit their knowledge, values, unique modes of generations, and obviously participate in society. And for this reason, people's ability to, and freedom, most importantly, to use their chosen language is essential for human dignity. And I would like really to emphasize that really expression in language of your choice is an important part of our work promoting human rights and freedom to express in the language of your choice. But what we see at global level, despite the immense value what language has, the majority of world languages, but we count around 7,000, and many of them are obviously used by indigenous peoples at risk of falling out of use. There are different reasons, as we don't have much time, I will not go into the details, but there are very different reasons why languages are falling out of use. They vary across different communities and locations. And in order to really take concrete actions, which was actually the outcome of International Year 2019, where UNESCO was invited to play an important role. The United Nations General Assembly proclaimed the period of 2022-2032 as international decade. And this year it's a first year. On 13th of December, UNESCO will be celebrating its official launch. We will be bringing high-level participants from around the world in Paris to our headquarters. So those who are present here today with us, you're most welcome to join us in person or to join us remotely, as the meeting will be transmitted. What I would like as well to emphasize, in order to act together, we believe that it's important to have one joint plan and very clearly defined objectives. And among the several important initiatives that UNESCO initiated at early beginning in 2020-21, it was the development of a global action plan, which provides us clearly a strategic framework for joint action, which outlines major actions and guidelines, provides to different stakeholders for implementation, monitoring of different activities around the world. And in order to facilitate its implementation, to support us, to provide guidance, UNESCO as well facilitated the establishment of the international governing structure, which we call it Global Task Force, for making a decade of action. And you can see it on the screen, what is the composition of Global Task Force. But I would like to emphasize as well that we do have members and we have observers, so everybody is welcome to join our discussions and contribute to the organization of International Decade. And Global Task Force obviously provide a strategic guidance for the implementation of action plan, as well stimulating discussions, providing us feedback on ongoing monitoring processes where we stand with progress made towards attainment of the objectives. What we have in action plan, we have identified the need that is expected by the end of the 2030 awareness about indigenous languages, importance of linguistic diversity and multilingualism. We believe as well what is important, what languages would be legally recognized at a state level, and there would be more integration, mainstreaming, and usage of languages across different functional domains, where it would be education, what we speak today, but at the same time, indigenous languages we hope will be used in legal system, in political environment, economic environment, discussions related to climate change, digital empowerment, speaking about gender equality aspects, and many other elements which are important and domains which are important for everyone. And obviously, human and institutional funding resources would be mobilized to support those actions. So you can see it as well on the screen, what were expected outcomes, which are actually very much related to the key assumptions. But we will increase a number of learners around the world who will learn, as well as we will support teachers who will teach, and elders, parents, families to transmit their language to the next generation. We believe that really language acquisition and gaining new learners, it is important for a safeguarding, protection, and promotion of indigenous languages. We as well would like to see what languages in general, and in particular indigenous, would become a global priority. But the commitment, international commitments, and of all stakeholders would include and address indigenous languages. As already mentioned, we hope that there will be more languages legally recognized and used in legal system and legislation. And again, across different functional screen, what the action plan, as already mentioned, has 4 major outcomes and 10 outputs, what we call it thematic. And number 1, education, lifelong learning environments were identified as a key priority. You can see it here, what there are 10 priority level, what we identified at global level. And you can see it clearly what's truly holistic approach to languages, dealing with inclusive education, addressing the importance of language for indigenous food systems, have relevant content, to have as well freedom of expression, working with media institutions, access information and technology, going to issues related to health, justice, heritage, biodiversity aspects, economic growth, gender equality, and partnerships. These are the 10 thematic areas which we emphasize. We as well identified during the process what there are direct linkages to Sustainable Development Agenda and goals. You can see it here on the screen, which are directly linked and those which are contributing. We as well have supporting frameworks, and what we really encourage everyone, including here present institutions around the world, but the global action plan cannot stay at global level. We really encourage every institution at national level, at regional level, to localize the action plan, actually to develop something which is relevant, but at the same time, which would be aligned to the global objectives that we have in order to act together. We as well identified what are the key target groups, and obviously indigenous language users, speakers and signers. We speak as well those who use sign language, but we are the most important or primary target group for all our activities. But we as well identified, as you can see it here marked in red, language learners, including new learners, as I mentioned. But we as well would like to see what there is more work done to support teachers, educators, language professionals, whether we are working as well interpretation, translation services, language technology developers, especially those who are indigenous, who would be able to transmit language, who will be able to deliver in the best manner possible for the new learners to engage them in learning processes. What you could see here as well, we identified for each of those thematic areas 10 activities, and these are the most relevant for education, related to education policies, plans, and programs, clearly increasing the education competencies of education professionals, including professional standards and skills, and obviously paying a due attention to the development of community-based programs, systems, institutions, and supporting them with relevant content. What I would like to invite you, as there are so many around us today, virtually, I could see that we are around 144 participants here together, and institutionally, this is a very important network for UNESCO Social School Network, but you would join the global community by registering as being a user and becoming a full member, which provides you a number of important opportunities, not only to learn what is going on within the context of International Decade, but as well to share your resources, to see what it is available around the world, engage with each other. And just very practical level, I hope that our colleagues will share this PowerPoint, but you can see it, but it's quite easy to register. There are a few steps only how to do it. And what it will bring you, first of all, we are monitoring from International Decade's website what goes on around the world. And you can see it here, which are the countries, which are the regions actively involved. And we know that this is not the most representative because there are many partners who did not register the activities, the projects. But up to date, during this year, we were able to identify what at least 211 events in 33 countries took place already. And we as well monitoring what are the languages that are targeted in most events. Activities with some longer-term initiatives, projects, which were launched in 14 countries. And we are very proud with the community of practice. And I hope after this evening or morning, depending where you live, there will be a bigger one, but we'll have more than 3,000 members who are today working with us, engaged. We are able to share with us information. And you can see it as well, what resources are available, over 500 resources in different languages. Many of them are educational resources for training, teaching indigenous languages. There are many research articles, statistical data, and many other materials which could be useful for your work. So I will stop here by inviting you as well to follow us on social media. And obviously, you're most welcome to join us on 13th of December and continue our work together. So back to the chair of this meeting. Thank you very much.
Bonjour, bonsoir, bon après-midi.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'll take over from my colleague. My name is Nora. I work in the section for education. And today I'll be giving you an overview of the quality of education and the role of languages. Now, first of all, I will try to be brief and to keep within my allocated time. So I'll be sending the link to my presentation in the chat box. I'll be also displaying slides on the screen in English, but I prefer to speak in French. My presentation will be divided into 3 parts. First of all, the importance of bilingual education based on first language. Then I'll talk about the summit which took place recently in September in New York. And lastly, I'll give you some examples of projects which are currently underway. Now, first of all, I'd like to talk about the importance of language in education overall. But when we talk about inclusive and equitable education, we focus on marginalized groups, including indigenous groups and their languages. Bilingual or multilingual education is a challenge that UNESCO has been focusing on since 1955, when it highlighted the importance of using mother tongue in education for the development of cognitive and non-cognitive skills of children. They enable the child to learn and also to achieve better educational outcomes. So when we talk about inclusive education, we mean education which is open and accessible to all. And within this framework, language is a key tool, and it should not constitute a barrier to participation, learning, and improving educational outcomes. Secondly, I'd like to give you an overview of the Transforming Education Summit, which took place during the General Assembly of the United Nations in September in New York. And this summit should serve to strengthen actions within the decade of indigenous languages. UNESCO has a normative standard-setting role, as well as an awareness-raising and advocacy role as a catalyst for promoting languages within education. And countries are tasked with implementing UNESCO's mission at their national level. So they'll be implementing these efforts within their education systems once UNESCO sets out these goals at its headquarters. And this implementation is carried out through regional bureaus. In my view, the Transforming Education Summit, or TESS as we call it, is something that builds upon the indigenous language decade, because we were able to draw on data disaggregated according to gender and background, and lots of other data which show us the key role of teachers in inclusive, equitable education, and particularly bilingual and multilingual education. Quality education without all of these factors is not possible. And this is why UNESCO focuses on Action 1, which is inclusive and equitable education, and particularly during this summit. During the summit, the Secretary General of the United Nations highlighted UNESCO's efforts in this field and also underscored the importance of political will to ensure that no one is left behind. He highlighted the importance of the summit, but also the importance of equitable investment in terms of geographical distribution and socioeconomic backgrounds. In the current context, the education system has faced a number of crises due to the pandemic and other factors, and this has particularly affected the most marginalized groups, and particularly indigenous people. So this summit was an opportunity to recall the importance of languages in ensuring equitable and access to quality education. Now, I'll just remind you that all of these slides are available in the link that I've shared in the chat. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into too much detail about this summit. Now, moving on to my last part of this presentation, I'd like to talk to you about some of the projects which are currently underway. notably the revision of the UNESCO framework for multilingual education. It's currently being revised, and the new title will be Education for a Multilingual World, Practices and Policies. And to this effect, we've established a group of experts with 11 experts from around the world, including 3 experts in the field of indigenous languages. This document will be published in 2023, and we've highlighted the importance in this document of multilingualism, with a focus on revitalizing languages. You can't talk about bilingual and multilingual education if mother tongues are threatened or extinct. And another comment, which is not on the screen, but I think it's still important to mention, and I apologize, I have a cold, so my voice is slightly husky, but UNESCO is playing a standard-setting role when it comes to implementing the 1960 Convention on the struggle against discrimination in education. We hold consultations on the implementation of this convention every year. I've published a link to the most recent consultation in the chat, and it's a very important consultation. Around 50 countries took part in this consultation and highlighted the importance of indigenous languages and bilingual and multilingual education. Now, lastly, I'd just like to highlight that there is a course online on family learning and indigenous languages, which was developed at the Hamburg Institute by our colleagues. That is the UNESCO Institute of Lifelong Learning. It's available online and it's free of charge until the end of this year. And it focuses on family learning and indigenous knowledges. So please feel free to take a look at the course. I try to be as brief as possible. In any case, you have access to all of the links in the chat. Thank you very much for your attention. Goodbye.
Terve. Jäpkues nitjään olkpeua.
Tervuoda saamis.
Kuode ohtake olkopellai.
Horutiliwech. Sakar shqaqih shokoqa. Chupari hon qihre qahoyohtihom chiwach richin. Achikiru mahanila katinel ritijonik pakachapel mayab richin niqaqi niqil riutzilej nimalej aslen richiri qatinamit richin rikaslen paruviru wachlef.
Gwe, Neen Delu si El Gould, ach Italy ganama si Alison Bernard Memorial High School, Eskuson ni Canada. Olda si Ilnui si Milanina Migomal, ach Nijik Mount Ilnui Sultida. United Nations Deluik, Monakta Midwen, Mo Tishk Igalad Wen. Olsidum, the Motoxum.
That was beautiful. Bonjour. Je m'appelle Isabelle Lavarche.
My name is Isabelle Lavarche, and I'm in charge of education at the National Coordinator for Canada. And we are delighted to be involved in this project on the Decade for Indigenous People. And indeed, Canada also has indigenous roots. We believe that comes from the Huron and Iroquois people. And now, of course, this is a common language within our country. So I'm extremely happy to be here with you so that we can so that I can moderate this panel, looking at how UNESCO schools can promote indigenous languages.
With all of you, I have the pleasure to showcase three promising practices from different regions around the globe on how they are basically promoting Indigenous languages, teaching and learning within their own local context. And we hope that this really inspires you to reflect on how does that make sense for you in your school, in your context, in your region of the world, how multilingualism is so important, but also let's not forget that Indigenous peoples have a basic human right to learn in their Indigenous language. So how can we promote that? Whether we have strong Indigenous populations in our schools or whether not, I think we all have responsibilities to learn about the historical relationships of our land and the peoples that were there and how we can include that. So I'm excited to showcase the first example coming from Europe, from the Sami in Finland, who are going to, first of all, we're going to show a video which will give you a primary example of how they are using technology to promote language learning in their region. And you'll actually get to see how it happens, which is really exciting. And then following up, we'll do a little presentation Q&A with some representatives, some Sami representatives of how they are doing that in their communities. So I'll let UNESCO now show the video.
Täällä Kotsamusa ja täällä Frida vuoro ja tun uatju juopuvatsan talle västitit Kotsamusa. Mutta täällä Frida istun luuva.
Jis lichi jäyri. Te mi jaurit lichi.
Mun litsi miijäyri.
Okei, tunnitsi i-jäyri, joo.
Mun litsin aanarjäyri.
Okei, mi-jaurit Hilda litsi.
Jemma, arpas vises.
Okei. No nyt, tälle muona juovuvää Kotsamosan ja taan mun koijatan Vildast vuosmutsan ja tälle järjesehu uatjuhkal västitit. Jistun litsi kove, te makkaar kove litsi.
Mun litsin pöydäkove.
Pöydäkove, joo, okei. Napa Frida tai Hilda.
Niellekove.
Joo.
Vaikka pennukove tai mini.
Joo. No nyt. Musta olit munin ete miin puolta mielan. Pilta halitahutun alkattetusli kietapajas.
Musta puolta mielan puasui.
No, puasui. Maitsuntot puasui parka. Mi Hildan puolta mielan.
Luonto.
Luonto. Ei tunut. Napa Frida puolta tunnin mielan.
Musta puolta mielan tiest ottaa laulumait mun laulistim tosta ko liise Anna laitopemi kielai pervaliste mun liuteim ohti karpotsuliude.
Okei, halitahu liutit tom.
Ja mun on muste, mutta jos kaunuu varo Yle Areenasta ja lasten areenasta kostni.
No, musta on kiinni eres, että mahtot mun kal musta mahtot mana. Mun on tom liute raitalas nuut mankii kötsämete.
Lahu.
Lama.
Lahu on aina mun.
Ain tiimes. Okei, mi pyhti vielä vaikka onne tom kötsät, mutta tothan mana näytete. Potsu, no. Musta vetteru.
I love this video because even though I do not speak Sami and understand what was being said, I think as an educator, you get to see the activities of how engaging it is with students, of how they're really trying to be participatory and engaging in learning this Indigenous language. So I would now like to present Hannah Helander, as well as Arla, who is co-presenting with you, Arla Maga from the Sami Parliament, to present this pilot project that they have started actually pre-pandemic of online learning, and what were their lessons learned from opportunities and also challenges of doing online learning for their Indigenous language.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us. So I work at the Sami Parliament of Finland. Briefly about the Parliament, we represent the Sami people and attend the issues concerning Sami people, languages and culture. And we work in cooperation with, for example, municipalities, like now with the municipality of Utsjoki and Hanna. And the situation of the Sami language education in Finland in brief. So we have 3 endangered indigenous Sami languages spoken in Finland. They are Inari, Skolt and Northern Sami. They are severely endangered. Northern Sami is definitely endangered. These are the estimations by the UNESCO. So the Basic Education Act in Finland ensures the education of these languages for pupils living in the Sami homeland only. That is the northernmost part of Finland. But we have estimated at the Sami Parliament that approximately 75% of the Sami children under the age of 10, however, live outside the Sami homeland. So this is a big challenge. Because of the growing number of the Sami people now move to other parts of Finland. But what's even more concerning is that only 15% of these children receive Sami language education. We have estimated that that's about 300 children in Finland. But yeah, opportunities began 2018 when Ministry of Education and Culture granted a funding. So we initiated, together with the municipality of Utsjoki, a pilot project on distance education of Sami languages. So this has meant access for learning Sami languages for Sami children around Finland, and the number of pupils is growing. We started with 50 pupils, now we have 150 pupils.
And I'm going to reflect the challenges and opportunities we have faced during the 4 years. The pilot project has been going on more from pedagogical point of view. First thing what we noticed was the lack of digital Sami language learning materials, which was quite obvious because there isn't even enough printed material. Another thing we noticed was that distance learning was quite new thing for schools, for the children, and also for our teachers. There was, of course, technical problems, but even bigger problem was with some kids that they didn't want to open their microphone or web camera. They didn't feel comfortable. And then we have noticed that there was quite a lot heterogeneity in our pupils' language skills. And of course, we try to form the learning groups so that there is same age children with the same level of language skills together, but it's not always possible because of the schedules. And we have tried to solve these problems by seeing them as pedagogical opportunities. So our teaching is child-oriented and accent-based. There's a lot of singing, playing, moving, dancing, as you saw from the video that was Inari Sami language lesson. And in every lesson, there is a lot of interaction. The teachers try to create psychological safety, that the kids know each other very well, and they dare to speak there on microphone. And as an answer to the heterogenic language skills, we have tried language immersion. The Sami language lesson might be the only time when the children hear Sami language. So this is really important, and the teachers try to support understanding visually, and the pupils can help each other too. Kiitos.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Ella. I think, as I said, I think that shows a brilliant example of using technology, particularly when there are limited language speakers, to connect with children or community members across. And I know in Canada, we've seen an uptake on online learning due to the pandemic, but also ways of how we can do that interactively. So now I want to offer a second example, this time of a promising practice, this time coming from Guatemala. Glenda, I'll invite you to put your camera on, or we'll show your video first. So again, showcasing in action how UNESCO schools and youth are promoting Indigenous languages. And in Guatemala, it's beautiful because they're also really linking that with environmental sustainability. How do we care for our planet and Mother Earth through the use of Indigenous languages and promotion? Entonces, vamos a ver el video de Guatemala.
Oh, let's look at the video from Guatemala.
Nin kakot chivech inin kaho chiniwak ashako yoshi chaber richiristani aloponi a cuchillo samehri anche dichin asociación seres.
Che uchanim kim ihbachiwe maqsach bakno rq qichetzih maqsach bakno mayaptzih shakoruma rahweshik qqut shkiwach rq aqalab album alitom shuquhe qiawq aslemal rqtzih muhkishba kohchab qatzih shaq tihoh baqib che chaq tihoh baqib chpam rqtzih par tihob al haschin ku uqowi برق أسلمة شق كتوش كيوش رنك أحشك على مقصد بكنو ركوتون رقم تقطيت شقوش.
أريكوريش تأجويسو كي جماكويل لكمون رجسيريس سلوت بنك أسلمال شكو خيب بنكمون أريكوري كنسخوخ بيقجوي ويوم نمق تقسيك كي بي التوماب رك الأماب أريكوري قيوم chak tak komon chewe ihri ki malteshcher komon rechiseris arekori nim tak chak ki omro komon shukohe tak tikhobal maltiosh chke lesiknik ki omchke arekori yashelutush
oje kuchakun parikomon rumal rahushik haketamach ri Tampal, Quilla, Lecanan, Lecatat, Parriuts, Reche, Caslem, Cato, Riacalab, Rialtomab.
Chipari Asociación Seres Chunguatamag, Chichon, Chiquibuchiri, Unaki, Aquala, Inimak Takunuk, Punti Honik, Nutlung, Rikin, Rije, Wakami, Intikir, Nisamuk, Kikingri Aquala.
Linajej linafuksik likuatinomal aansa alepal sa putsu sa tsolok likinelisa retestaru litinke panak sali kakalepal ajelu likuatlik okan nakabanjoshi jiruliseres
Lo que más me ha inspirado de la red de jóvenes de Ceres es de que existen espacios de participación. Dentro de ellas he recibido herramientas para desenvolver mi liderazgo, creando espacios de participación, concientización dentro de mi comunidad y seguir motivando a las juventudes para que sean agentes de cambio.
Wonderful. I'd like to now present to you Glenda Marisol Xulu Perez from Guatemala, who will speak about her involvement in working with youth to promote the Mayan language, and as well how in her activities this also promotes a perspective of environmental sustainability and protecting our planet. Glenda, to you.
Muchísimas gracias. Buenas tardes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening to all of you. I just wanted to confirm everyone can see my screen? Everyone can see the presentation? Yes? Yes. Yes, perfect. Okay. So, first, I would like to share with you that I'm here as a Kitchikel woman, but by my side, I also have wonderful young women from my country and a youth leader, a youth movement of Ceres, which is responsible for every single word that I'm going to say today. And indeed, I'm not just speaking on behalf of myself, but of this community that I represent. So before speaking about how we work and the programs that we set up in indigenous languages, I'd like to say the following. Languages are a vector so that we can share different knowledge. And this allows us to share a way of seeing the world with others, helps us to build our own path in life. And it is also something that we can hand down to future generations. Now, really, indigenous languages of all communities have a cosmology behind them, knowledge behind them, and so many different ways of understanding the world, just like the different kind of connections that we have with the universe and with our Earth. And when it comes to these connections in our world and in our communities, we can understand where we come from, our laws, and therefore we don't have to have anything imposed on us. And this is something that we believe is very important. It's very important for us to be able to explain our own experiences in our indigenous languages. If we lose that, then we lose all of those different factors that I spoke about. And that's something that hurts. Anytime that happens, it hurts. Because, especially rather, when it's due to systems that have been imposed on us. And we've seen this in many regions of the world, especially in Latin America. And we have lost a large variety of knowledge. Now, all of this relationship that our grandparents had with Mother Earth and with the environment, these are things that today's communities don't understand as much. And therefore, we believe that that's why intergenerational dialogue is necessary, so that we can continue sharing this knowledge and this history. So as organizations and institutions working in the field of education and training, we have a lot of responsibility. And we need to really create these spaces so that new generations can continue to carry these values, this cosmology, these stories, all of this knowledge. When we're speaking about sustainable development communities, it's really key that we can all work together so that we can create concepts that really speak to young people. Maybe they will wonder, what does sustainable development mean for our community? What is sustainability for our community? In reality, all of these new terms that have been used now in different contexts are something that is already deeply rooted in communities within their indigenous communities and languages. And when we started working with communities, looking at this way of life that existed in communities, once we started doing that, we saw that we could actually strengthen practices, ancestral practices, and promote them. This is unfortunately being lost in today's world, but they're the key for sustainability and sustainable development. When we push for these kinds of spaces and we analyze what goes on in these spaces, we see that we're opening people's minds so that they can understand the real wealth of knowledge that exists. We consider this youth movement as something that will lead us to transform our communities, and we're very inspired and motivated to do that. And in Guatemala, around 50% of young people identify as being indigenous women. And when we set up programs in communities, we see that we arrive as facilitators, let's say, and there are different Mayan languages in different regions of the country. In the regions where we work, we often don't actually know the language of the young people. Because I'm Kikchitel, from the Kikchitel region, but we have other community trainers from other communities, and we don't necessarily speak their language, and therefore it's difficult to be able to speak to young people so they can transmit the knowledge. And so young people who speak these languages, and they're the ones who actually helped us to get our message across. And we've also heard a lot from young people who have been actually setting up training programs in their own languages. And this really helps them to actually become leaders themselves and transmit their own way of life to others, understand their own way of life. Now, this creates a sense of belonging in everything that we do. So I can mention in this context some practices that we have in our indigenous communities. For example, when it comes to agriculture, we believe that in the lands where we plant our seeds, where we sow our seeds, where we harvest our crops, we learn, in fact, what it means to actually work the land. And we have practices, for example, in the field of what we call permaculture. We also take from the land just what is necessary for us to live, not to try and become rich from the land. And we have a lifestyle according to which we believe that there should be equal opportunities within our community. We have understood how to look after our resources because we understand that we are interdependent. There's a link between ourselves and the earth. That's why we want to protect it when we work the land. And it's not about exploiting the land. We're not working the land to try and get rich in any way. So that's why we are resistant when it comes to systems that want to invade our lands and put in place practices that are not at all sustainable. And there is also a big dimension of spirituality involved, because we have ceremonies, we pay homage to the land, because we know that we can, as indigenous people, have our own way of organizing our communities. And once again, we are always thinking about the common good in all of the decisions that we take. And also when it comes to medicine as well, the best way of using water, also in our farming practices. And there's so much diversity as well in our communities. And this is just a drop in the ocean of what I could tell you about our communities and the complex histories of our communities and our cultures. And that's why it's necessary for us to be able to explain all these processes in our indigenous languages. That's what I wanted to say to you today. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Glenda. It is such an important message to connect indigenous languages with the land. And this example from Guatemala really showcases how they're using language learning directly with agriculture, with learning how to take care of the land, make food, feed themselves in the community, and be very active. So thank you. That was such a beautiful example. Our last promising practice comes from close to where I was born, in the east coast of Canada, in Cape Breton Island, in the First Nations community of Eskazoni. I'm very pleased to showcase this example, as it's near and dear to my heart as well, to see what is happening only a few hours from where I grew up. So first we'll show the video and then have a concrete example of how they're using arts and culture, intergenerational learning with elders, land-based education to teach and promote the Mi'kmaq language.
Gwenny DeLuisi Noel Johnson, principal of St. Bernard Memorial High School. My name is Noel Johnson, and I just want to say thank you for allowing us the opportunity to participate in this conference. We have a video for you, and I hope you enjoy it. It just highlights some of the things that we do at ABMHS to integrate language, art, and culture into the programs that we do here at our school.
In our language, degek, it could be cold outside. Degek nilo, right? My food is cold. Degek, your drink is cold, right? We got him lagluswahan, write it down, guys. Chigladun la, gate, midum liga sigma pesa. See how it is? Because it's related to each other. But it's chigladun la, guess bisag, it's raining. The best song means snowing.
If it ends in I, and this is another vowel, they can't meet. You would have to drop your I, and it would be absukta. Okay?
So it'll just be A-P-S-U-K.
Yep, you got it.
No apostrophes in that?
No, absukta, no apostrophes. Because absukta won't work. All of these, you have a vowel. That means in all of the words you create, you have to drop your I. So it's gwinabawit, winkudat, winabawit, winigit, and so on. Okay? So you could use winnie as many times as you can, and these could be your endings. Try winnie for all of them. Some won't work, but some will. But you gotta make sure you understand this and that. Okay? So, winabawit, drop your I.
Kulamugig Judish. Enche, Victor Bartarenche. Panadena. Wait, where's he doing? Wait, Ned.
Oh, look at the little
Ready.
centipede.
Ready. Yes, is it? Terry doing. Scotch, yeah. That almost said Scotch.
Ah, you can work with that.
Stop on that move.
Tanjiste. Na wol deu sini. Maksues mati. Bagai kami yang ceri kadu. Oh, ni kadu mentir. Paju ahunji paju kamu we. No tes ki mentir paju ni.
What a great example video of how this school is really involving the community. So I'd now like to invite the school principal for this UNESCO school, Newell Johnson, as well as Carter Chiasson, who is a music teacher who uses the music and arts to promote the Mi'kmaq language, to just speak a little bit more to us about how they are promoting the Mi'kmaq language in their community. Hi, Carter and Newell.
Hi there, we're just setting up our screen.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Carter, and this is Well. Hope you like that video. Essentially, that's a day in the life of our school, and highlighting some of the things we do to promote language and culture here at ABMHS. The music video that you've seen there was actually one of the projects I did with the kids, as is the screenshot in this opening slide, as well as from another one. We're going to come back to that a little later, but I got a few slides to go through here. So just me or you, Noel?
Me.
That's you.
All right, just to give you a little bit of background of where we are and who we are called Alice and Bernard Memorial High School, formerly known as Eskazoni High School. We are the largest Mi'kmaq high school east of Quebec, Montreal. Yeah. We've got 270 students. We're 9 to 12 inclusive. So one of our themes that we like to inspire our students is educating our future in touch with our culture. And from the video, you've seen that we integrate a lot of our cultural history, our cultural knowledge into all the things that we do. We follow the provincial guidelines and curriculum. We are an independent school. However, we do align our curriculum with the province so that our students can be transferable and that they are ready for post-secondary whenever they decide to leave. We have the Mi'kmaq Education Act that was established in 1999, and that just states that all First Nation schools who have their own education system they can govern themselves and create their own provincial guideline, their own guidelines and their own curriculum. There is an umbrella program that supports all First Nation schools, and it's called Mi'kmaq Namad Noe. They support all 13 bands, all 13 schools. They're just an amazing organization.
Funny. So if just a little bit about where we're at in the world. So we are on the island of Cape Breton, which in Mi'kmaq is the word Unamagi, which is on the most eastern part of mainland Canada. And we're in the province of Nova Scotia. It's a very beautiful part of the world. This is actually a photo of our community and our school. Our school's right here, is this correct? This is before the school was here, right? It's an older photo. Correct. Yeah. Anyway, if you're ever on this part of the world, come and visit us. And just talk a little bit about the Mi'kmaq language. So the Mi'kmaq language is actually an endangered language. the more than 65,000 Mi'kmaq people alive today, only about 11,000 people speak the language still. And it's Mi'kmaq speaking more so in this community, in our community of Eskazoni, more than any other community. I've had to travel around to most of the Mi'kmaq communities, and you really don't hear it spoken that much, unfortunately. But it's still spoken here, and here in Eskazoni. Actually, an elder told me one time that it's possible that this language could be extinct within 2 generations. Yeah. So anyway, lots is being done to promote the language and try to prevent that from happening. Something else that a lot of people don't know is that this language was orally passed down until very recent times. Actually, it wasn't until the 1970s that the 2 gentlemen, one gentleman who lives nearby, actually, Bernie Francis, developed an orthography where the language can be written down, right? Which has done huge things to help and preserve this language. And as our video highlighted, and as we'll talk about here in a few minutes, there's just so much going on to revitalize the language through the MK organization that Noel mentioned. Something else is the Mi'kmaq Immersion School, which you can find out a lot about online. There's been lots of news stories and such. And that's an immersion school here in the community where all students that attend the school actually attend school and speak only Mi'kmaq all day, every day. Up until what grade is that?
4.
Up until grade 4. And it's a very special thing. Yeah, and then we'll bring attention to that. We have a YouTube where myself and other teachers create content for, and you can check that out online. And one of the things that I do is create music videos, or write original music and create music videos with my students, and short documentaries as well on different educational initiatives that are happening here. And yeah, so in the video that played earlier was based around a project I did called Mayunamagi, My Cape Breton, that featured, many of our students as musicians and singers, as well as people from the community. And there's other projects on there too that deal with language and culture. One of them is this one here. It's called We Shall Remain, which was actually a commission by the National Orchestra of Canada. So we wrote that song for them, and it's been performed with the National Orchestra a number of times. And there's clips of that online, as well as a pop version, which I produced with the students. And then we actually do the cover of the Beatles song Blackbird, which was incredible. It went viral, and it's done a lot to help bring awareness to all the efforts to save the Mi'kmaq language. And there's various other ones. Yeah, you can check those all out on our YouTube. So please do that. And if anybody wants to get in touch, just look us up online, Allison Bernard Memorial High School.
Thank you to you both. It just showcases really some concrete examples and ways that schools can rally and engage with the community, with elders, with music, but also the use of music and how arts, culture, music can all be intertwined. And what I love about this example is exactly these concrete community projects that then are shared and show pride in Indigenous languages. So we will share in the chat, actually, Carter, if you want in the chat to share your YouTube link, because there's also some really beautiful videos, music videos that can maybe inspire other communities to also use music and the arts as a way to promote Indigenous languages. Now we're, I guess, to our action part. So I will now share the stage with my UNESCO colleagues, Eric and Vanessa, who are going to showcase how you can take action in the decade in your community.
Thank you very much, Isabel, and thank you to all our panelists today for sharing their transformative pedagogical approaches and learning activities for teaching and learning Indigenous languages. Our panelists today are also members of our ASPnet Indigenous Advisory Committee, which has been established at the very beginning of this pilot project in early 2022. Together, we co-created the activities of the one-year pilot project, including a global survey and this global webinar today. My colleague Vanessa will now give you some further insights in the survey results, and the report which we are working on will be shared in November before the official launch event for the decade on 13th of December. Vanessa?
Yes, thank you very much to all the schools and the national coordinators who replied to our survey. I know a number of you are here today. There were 211 schools who replied to the survey from 39 countries from all around the world. It was incredibly rich. We very much appreciate the time that everyone took in sharing their school's practices, experiences, and projects. And as Eric noted, we're in the process of finalizing a report that synthesizes the results of the survey in order to share all of those inspiring practices going on in ASPnet schools for the teaching of Indigenous languages. And the report on the survey discusses, firstly, the teaching of Indigenous languages in in-person or digital classroom settings. Secondly, the promoting of Indigenous languages through international days and other activities. And then thirdly, the mainstreaming of Indigenous peoples, cultures, histories, and knowledges based on a human rights approach. The report, well, it highlights activities of diverse ASPnet schools from around the world. The work of the panelists who shared with us today is included in this report. And to give you a few more examples, one example of an ASPnet school with an interesting approach to the teaching of Indigenous languages is the Rosebank School in Auckland, New Zealand. The school offers bilingual programs in Te Reo Maori and Samoan, and incorporates Indigenous knowledges into its curriculum and school culture. Shelby Kiwi, who's the team leader of the Te Reo Maori unit at the Rosebank School, and she's also a member of the ASPnet's Indigenous Advisory Committee. She noted that the Maori bilingual program not only offers robust language learning through a 50-50 partage between English and Maori, but it also seeks to integrate Maori knowledge and practices into daily rituals, like the opening and the closing of the school day, as well as into subject courses, such as mathematics. And the goal is therefore an education system which is fully interwoven with Indigenous knowledge. Shelby was originally scheduled to be a panelist today and unfortunately couldn't join us. However, she shared a video of a song performed by the students of the Rosebank School. The Waiata song in Te Reo Maori talks about the beauty and importance of keeping this Indigenous language alive. And we're going to take a quick look at it right now. Great, thank you so much. And to give an example of a school that uses UN International Days, which is another idea that's highlighted in the report to promote Indigenous languages, there's the Sistema Educativo San Isidro Labrador in Costa Rica. They celebrate the International Day of the Words Indigenous Peoples, and then they use the occasion to teach students words in Bribri. Students research the Indigenous peoples of Costa Rica, and then they put cards with words in Spanish and in Bribri all around the school, as you can see in the photo on the slide. There are also other schools that have worked to mainstream Indigenous peoples' cultures, histories, and knowledges. So for example, Havergal College in Toronto, Canada, has really adopted a whole school approach to incorporate Indigenous cultures and knowledges. They engaged an Indigenous educational consultant to audit the curriculum, to educate and train faculty, and also to support the planning of student activities. And this has allowed Havergal College to integrate Indigenous ways of knowing into their primary and secondary school classrooms. The report also provides suggestions for the teaching of Indigenous languages based on all of these very rich survey results. So we look forward to sharing the report with you very soon. And there are just so many promising and inspiring practices in ASPnet schools today. So thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Yeah, in the registration form for this webinar, we have asked you all about the languages you speak, write, or sign, and why languages matter for sustainable development. Your responses are very impressive. So there were over 300 people have registered for the webinar from over 75 countries, and together we all speak, sign, or write over 120 languages. To the question why languages matter for sustainable development, you have stated, for example, languages are the main means of communication. They convey messages, express emotions, intentions, and values. They allow us to understand one another and to share information. Languages are people's perspective of the world. We need them to share and or negotiate the values of sustainable development. Language is the basis for culture and identity and for learning. They carry the knowledge of the land. It makes us connected because through language, we can pass our cultures, traditions, and customs to the next and future generations. Because we are a global community and the preservation of languages forms part of who we are. Languages promotes tolerance and understanding of diverse peoples of their cultures. Languages are there to ensure the inclusion of all because language, it's a unifier. So your responses make clear languages, linguistic diversity, and multilingualism matter for sustainable and societal development. Languages are part of our identity, enable us to participate, to create, interact with each other, and to transmit our knowledges and heritages. Language plays a crucial role for people and the planet and for inclusive education for all. That's why it needs our joint effort to use, preserve, protect, and revitalize all languages, like the motto of the decade, leaving no one behind, no one outside. The decade has just started, and we are sure that you have many ideas on how you can contribute to it and to take action. So we are curious to learn about your ideas and like to invite every one of you to participate in a Mentimeter on the two questions. What is your main takeaway from this webinar? And also to share your ideas on how you can take action to contribute to the decade in your local context or school. To participate, there are three options. You can click on the link in the chat. So I ask my colleagues to put the link in the chat to get on the survey, or you can scan the QR code which is displayed on the screen, or you can type in www.menti.com and insert the code. Please participate in this Mentimeter. We are curious to learn about your practice and ideas for the decade, and have a look in a minute. Let's have a look at the results. I think it takes a bit more time for everyone to participate. So please click on the link in the chat. And we are waiting for the responses. I can also share once more my screen with the QR code and the link. So please, when you go to www.menti.com, please insert this link, this code also 31945114. But you can also click directly in the link which is provided in the chat. So we are now jumping back to the results. to have a look. Oh, now there are a lot of main takeaways. So language is the heart of identity. We need more inclusion of many indigenous languages around the world. I speak Marma, an endangered language from Bangladesh. Diversity of cultures. Indigenous language for sustainable development. Indigenous languages is a human right. Language learning and practice can cross over curriculum. All cultures have a great deal to offer. Amazing projects are happening. Great. Let's have a look at your ideas for joint action for the decade. More empowerment in the field level to encourage young generation to learn their own language beside dominant languages. To share with them in webinar, to have more webinars. Research the ILE website and social media pages. So as a follow-up from this webinar, we will share with you all the presentations, the recordings in diverse languages, the videos you have seen today, but we also provide you with a guideline how you can join the global community for the decade as shared by our colleagues, how you can access the platform, how you can create own events to advocate for indigenous languages around the world. This will be a follow-up we will provide to you. There's one more organizing projects and activities with the schools of different districts. Yes, so to enable community learning to work together with other schools. And as a global network, we will, of course, will support you also to work together and build collaborations to provide joint learning opportunities. We will collect all those results and also will share this with you as a follow-up. Thank you so much for your rich participation. Thank you to all who spoke today and shared their insights and practices. And I'm now very pleased to invite once more Mr. Kistabish to provide the closing remarks of today's webinar. Mr. Kistabish is the president of the Canadian Commission, but he's also a member of the Global Task Force for making a decade of action for indigenous languages. And we are looking forward to your closing. Thank you so much. Sir, we are not able to hear you.
They always say these are intelligent machines. Sometimes I don't believe that. Most of the time, I don't believe that. Anyways, since I'm doing the closing remarks, I'm going to cheat a little bit about your last question here, the previous presentation. I have some, I enjoy all the presentation that happened this afternoon. I say this afternoon because for me it's 2 o'clock now. And I really enjoy the way that is being presented by the Eskasuni community in my country. They use music, they use games, they use these kind of activities to promote the language. That is one of the best way to revitalize the language. I was raised in the bush myself. I was raised until 6 years old in a bush. So the only way that I learned my language was by playing. I've always played with my dad and with my mom and my uncles, my aunties, because I was a little boy, 3, 4, 5 years old. And it was wonderful. That was the most wonderful part of my life, was to be traveling there, to be a nomad, to travel all the territory. It was wonderful. That's how I've been learning my language. And I still speak my language. So it is, I try to convince sometimes people at the UNESCO here in Canada to have translation not only in French, English, or Spanish, but to have a translation be done in my language. I could speak my own language, but hire someone that will translate my presentation. This is one of my wish that I have. I know Irmanda was listening the other day about this project, this idea, but it could happen. I know it's not very costly to have that. All we have to do is find some fluent speakers in their own language in order to do that. I have other ideas about exercise or activities that could be done. We always see during the presentation, most of the presentation that I've seen so far, they always mention about the revitalization of the language. But in a decade, 10 years, that will take, it's going to be only stopping the thing that we are disappearing. You know, we have to do other things. The other day, I was listening to an elder that he says that in 10 years from now, I wish to hear children speak in their own language in the schoolyard. That's a dream. Me, what I said about that is, why don't we make a promotion and a promotion to all the future parents, the future moms, the future dads, that every newborn should have their own name in their own language. In 10 years from now, those kids will go in the school and they're going to shout their names in the schoolyard. We will be no more John, Paul, George, or Ringo, but we're going to have Ishinaguzi, Wanaki, Minashin, Minawe. These are the names of my families. And Migis is 40 years old. I was doing that 40 years ago. You know, to keep the language alive, we start with our names. This is one of the ideas that I have in there. Also, we have to use humor. We have to laugh. I learned my language like that. Every time I pronounce a word, always my dad laughs at me, and my mom also. But it's okay, you know, to laugh. It's a good thing. Also, I know that education will take a big part of the responsibility of revitalizing the language, but also they need partners. They need activities around the education, like music, the drum, like theater, like movies, like plays, theater. These kind of activities are necessary to support the action that was taken by the education system. It is essential because kids, when they go home, you know, they learn words at school, but after that, it's empty. I always remark that when the school teaches few words, it's good. It's very good, actually, because my grandson, that's where he learned my language, at the school. But he needs some activities to promote the language. So playing is a good way. I encourage my elders, my old people in my community, when they play cards, they use their own language to play cards, but they use a story at the same time when they play. It's like a theater. It's like a movie, the story that they tell while playing cards. In education system also, we have to be really have a creative minds in order to develop a space for the kids, especially in school boards in town. these institutions don't have any much space of time in order to teach some words. We have some kids in my place that they go to that kind of a school. That will be great if the school put in place a space of time, 5 minutes or less, but to teach only one word. And we just have to imagine how that kid, that native kid in that classroom, is alone. He will be the one who's going to bring a new word each time. It's going to make him proud. We installed gradually dignity, a proud to be an Indian, to be an Anishinaabe. This is one of the things that we have to do. And other partners, other organizations have to rewrite the history of our people in each country. It is essential to know the real story. It is the truth, and that truth has to be exposed to our population, to our children, to our kids. And that way, they're going to ask questions also, and we have to provide answers. So we're going to restore the memory of our ancestors. We're going to install their way of thinking, and we're going to be restoring their image. And then we're going to ask to have the restitutions of everything that they were taking from us. That's a big challenge that we have in front of us, but it's exciting. I'm living now an exciting moment of my time now because of what's happening, because of the challenges that we have in front of us, It's a passionate thing, to do. So I'm willing to travel all around the world if I wanted to, because I wanted to deliver this message to everyone. And I hope I'm going to see all of you on December in Paris, especially you, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Miigwech, Richard. The global launch is happening on December 13th, so tune in or show up in Paris to meet Richard and the rest of the UNESCO crew.
Wow. 1, 2, 3. Since the moon was just a child,
and the sea flowed like a crystal stream. The trees grew strong upon my mountains wild, and the sky was the bluest you've ever seen, bluer than the sky in eagle's dream. Sangkul teknik, mami amadik mi kecedadi je. Kalau abang wanda si, dan eruji walodo suk Disney.
I am ancient and forever, and they call my name Cape Breton. I have walked 1,000 seasons, filled the beauty of my shores. The hand of God has touched me. If you're quiet, you can hear Him as He wanders, singing quietly in the hills beyond your door.
Young stars took me pouches gave ganji.
J'ai versé quelques larmes en fin de journée pour ceux au loin qui se sentent endormis. Isna greater nek Mordechai. Nos enfants ont voulu une nouvelle vie. Ils se sont établis en amitié.
D'ennemis gagnent when I'm oldie.
Jamais ne seront-ils oubliés.
I am ancient and forever, and they call my name Cape Breton. I have watched 1,000 seasons fill the beauty of my shore. The hand of God has touched me. If you're quiet, you can hear him as he wanders singing quietly in the hills beyond your door. I am calling to my children, come back home.
Skanbuch Kaylee of Uxbage Dongamore.
Imperadoxim Abajedayo. Alors que l'élection fait là-haut. Elle a le rose de ma
For I am ancient and forever, and they call my name Cape Breton. I have watched 1,000 seasons fill the beauty of my shores. The hand of God has touched me. If you're quiet, you can hear him as he wanders singing quietly in the hills beyond your door. Yes, he is wandering, singing quietly in the hills forevermore.
Merci, bye.